Hey guys, Brad Bodnerchuk back with another podcast as we discuss and dissect all things leadership. I wanted to actually quickly apologize for the pause that has been the reality with the podcast, although I'm not going to apologize because I'm sure you've all been fine and life just happens. And I want to respect that. Life happened and the podcast, unfortunately, just fell down the priority list. But the important thing is we are here today and I'm excited to be here. And admittedly, I actually really love this process. I love creating content. I love getting things that are inside of my mind out. And I love it even more if you can benefit from it. So I'm really hopeful that today you will take something from this podcast. In the past, that's been your reality as well. So something has been on my mind for the last few days, weeks, and months, honestly. And this really was loud for me months ago, but I didn't do anything about it. And what I mean by that is I didn't come on here and create a podcast about it. I didn't really put much more thought or effort into it, but it definitely stayed with me. And like I mentioned, it's come back into my mind and to my reality really over the past few weeks and even days. And I'll share with you the story and I'll get to the point. So I want to talk about Pepsi drivers. Stay with me here. So months ago, I find myself in, I guess, what you would consider to be a loading bay or a loading dock area. And I thought I was completely alone. I was in a storage space that I was accessing and looking for something at the time. And I heard something that sounded like someone who was really disgruntled. And there's something within me whenever I hear that, and I actually see this in our kids as well, especially our daughter. We right away want to figure out what's wrong. I think that's pretty human in all of us. But I also feel compelled to help that person, whatever it is they're dealing with. And this person sounded like they were in some distress. I couldn't actually see anyone, but I heard them. So I stopped what I was doing and went looking around. And I finally saw someone, a man, wearing his Pepsi uniform. And he was clearly moving some pallets of product, beverages of some sort. Irrelevant to the story, but you get what I'm talking about. There's a guy, he works for Pepsi. This isn't against Pepsi, but just for context, he works for Pepsi. He's unloading product from his truck into this loading bay, loading dock area. And he's clearly, my word is disgruntled. He's clearly upset. He's clearly flustered or frustrated. And again, my instinct is to go, okay, how can I help? And I think I even said that. Hey, I said, how are you? And we'll get to what happened with that answer. And eventually I asked if I could help. So my initial question, which again, I think is human in all of us, it was a statement first, hello, and then how are you? And this is what has stuck with me since months ago. And his response to me was this: you should know never to ask a Pepsi driver how they are. You can assume that I'm miserable. And while I'm sure words came out of my mouth next, like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Can I help? Do you need a hand? My mind was going in a million directions. And while I'm not the CEO of Pepsi, I started thinking, oh my gosh, what if I was? And if I was, this is a major problem. This is a major problem that Pepsi is a massive company, and perhaps that's part of the issue. Pepsi is a massive company. I have no idea how many people they employ. I would assume in the tens of thousands of people. And I'm sure if you really broke it down to an org chart, maybe even hundreds of thousands worldwide. But the fact that this gentleman in Nova Scotia, and I'm going to guess he was in his 50s, he was so visibly upset and unhappy, and then felt it totally okay to share with me, some random person who he met in a loading dock, that his employer or working in the role that he's working in for his employer was miserable. He didn't like it. He actually hated it. And again, as my mind is going down this path of, okay, well, who's his boss, and who's his boss's boss, and who's his boss's boss's boss, and do they know this is his reality? And then part of me thought, maybe this is just part of it. Maybe being a driver for Pepsi or Coca-Cola or one of those big brands, this is just the reality. And I thought, no, that's ridiculous. That doesn't have to be the reality at all. It doesn't have to be the reality in any role, in any position, in any company. But for some reason it was for this person. Cut to just a few days ago, I'm having a conversation with someone who works for a completely different company who will remain unnamed and holds a pretty senior role, but still reports to a few people. And a few of them being really important to this story. This person was also sharing with me that they were completely unhappy. They felt like they were on an island. They felt like they were unseen. It reminds me again of another story with someone a few weeks ago who said to me, it feels like when I go to work, I dig a ditch, and then after work, someone fills it back in, and it's like I was never even there. How incredibly sad of a reality is that? How incredibly sad of a reality is we have some of the really most crucial people to our business as far as an operational standpoint, like this guy with Pepsi. You kind of need him or her, you need them to be delivering your product. And if they're not happy, what is that experience going to be like when they're interacting with your customers, the clients that are buying your products, that are ordering your products? I just think they're the companies that are playing, to use Simon Sinek's fascination with this idea of companies that are playing a finite game, meaning it's all about increasing stock values, it's all about increasing shares, it's all about making money, it's all about hitting targets for the quarter, as opposed to the infinite game, which is more about the people. It's more about how is my team operating? How are they doing right now? How are they feeling? And you can sit there and you can say, oh, Brad, it's at the end of the day, we have to make money. And I get that. I'm not ignorant to that. But can we not see the value in making this driver not necessarily, ecstatic, but at least not miserable? Can we at least facilitate a conversation with our team to say, hey, how are you feeling right now in your role? How is this playing out for you? Is this what you expected for it to be? And then the next step would be something like, how am I showing up for you as a leader? Do you feel supported? Do you have the tools that you need? All of these questions should be asked, and should be asked consistently, not every 90 days, because it just isn't enough. In today's reality, in business, I know from the research that I have seen, the number one reason that people leave a job is because they don't feel appreciated. How do we do that? How can we as leaders impact that? Well, it's by telling them they're appreciated. It's by asking them questions. It's about actually showing up and showing that you care, and showing them that they're more than just a X to the business. So when I sat there, and ultimately I couldn't help this person in the loading dock area, this Pepsi employee, I believe he was actually just finishing up what he was doing. And when he shut the back of his truck and began to drive away, I just stood there. I stood there in absolute disbelief. And while it wasn't appropriate, I kind of felt like running after his truck, asking him to stop and giving him a hug and telling him that he mattered. Telling him that, hey, just so you know, what you're doing is incredibly important. If you weren't doing what you were doing, the whole system kind of wouldn't work for Pepsi. But that wasn't my job to do that, and nor was I fast enough to run after his truck, and he probably would have thought I was crazy if I did it. But I really do believe that the difference between a good business and a great business is the difference between a good leader and a great leader, or just a leader and a great leader. And a great leader somehow, some way finds time, and this is a lot of what the work that I do with my clients on is we create that time. We make that time so that it is an absolute high priority that we are touching base with our people. We are letting them know that we know that it's tough being a driver. We know that there may be some challenges. And hey, just so you know, I'm always here for you. If you need to reach out, if you need something, please do it. Those little tiny things, that 15-minute conversation or that text message or that phone call will do more for that person than anything else. I promise you. And that will pay dividends down the road for your business, and you will see it on the bottom line. So again, I was left in disbelief. I was sat there thinking, this can't be the reality. How is this business so successful? How is Pepsi such a massive company? Yet someone who's so important to the business, I would argue, so important to the business, is miserable. And he literally said to me, you should know that you never ask a Pepsi, you should never, sorry, let's try that again. You should know to never ask a Pepsi driver how they are doing. That's just sad. And I don't want that for that person. Heck, I don't want that for Pepsi, right? And I really do believe that the answer or the quote unquote fix is a simple and accessible one, but you have to want to. And when I sat across from that person a few days ago, and they're so talented and they're so passionate, and they said that they felt like they were on an island, I thought, man, all these companies that say culture and people and this is important and this is a top priority, I don't want to call you out, but as someone who spent a lot of his young years making up stories to come across a certain way, I can smell it, and I smell it right now, and it isn't good. And I'm not here to say, hey, give me a call and I'll fix it for you, but I will let you know this is what I do. I'm incredibly passionate about helping leaders get super focused on what will actually move the needle. And what's going to move the needle in 2023? Sure, it's creative marketing. Absolutely. Sure, it's Facebook ads. Can't argue that. The data is there. But I will put time spent with your people, time spent on your people, way above anything else at this very moment in time, and likely for the rest of time. Your people are important. Make them feel that way, or you're making a very clear decision. And the decision is, I don't actually care. And I personally don't want to support businesses that operate that way. I personally don't want to support an industry that operates that way. I want to work with and I want to support companies that see how important, how crucial their people are to what they do. I don't know of many businesses that could open up tomorrow, whether it's a product or a service, and do it with nobody outside of the senior leadership group. I just don't see how it's possible. So that's a really big risk that you're running if you're not investing in your people. And I'm not talking about, parades and massive efforts, time, and investment into individuals. What I'm asking for and what I'm offering is an effort. I'm offering you the idea of taking action. I'm offering you to say, when you started this business, how did you want to treat your staff? And does that align with how you're showing up today? So yeah, I just can't believe how often I'm hearing this in 2023 with these quote unquote progressive companies. And I want for that to change. And I'm here to do whatever I can do to help that, whether it's a small business, a medium sized business, an individual, an international business. I'm here and I'm excited and I want to do it. And I want to do it as badly as I wanted to go and give that guy a hug in the truck, because at the end of the day, he's a human being and he just doesn't, no one deserves to be miserable like that. Right. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. You tell me, but that's it. Happy to be back. Happy to be putting out this content. So happy with what I'm doing at the moment. And it gives me so much to be giving back to my clients and giving back to local businesses and businesses and sharing with you guys as well. So if you found this podcast beneficial, it would mean the world to me if you would share it with someone else who you think might take something from it. Also, if you would leave a 5-star review and even a written review, that would really help me with the analytics and help more people see the podcast. Before I let you go, I will also mention that starting, the 24th of February. So depending on when you're listening to this, 24th of February will be my very first live webinar. We're doing a Fearless Leader Friday, every Friday for perpetuity, where I'm going to go online for an hour. You can register through the link in my Instagram bio, and you can join me as I talk about tips, tools, systems, processes, mindset, all of those pieces that are going to allow for you to either become a fearless leader or to become a more impactful fearless leader. So I encourage you, whether you are leading a small business, owning a small business, working in a community, you're a mom or a dad, if you have any sort of influence over anyone else, I really do feel like you can take something from these live webinars. So again, that link is in my Instagram bio, and it's just at Brad Bodnerchuk. That's it, guys. Done. Easy. Simple. I appreciate you all. Have an incredibly fantastic day. I'll try that again. Have an incredibly fantastic day. And you guys know what to do until next time. Be good and do good. Peace.